Like, this isn't new. It's not some secret agenda that people are pushing out there.
If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
Hey everybody, so FightinCowboy, a pretty content creator. What the goddamn, I mean, it's like the third take, guys. It's starting badly and I haven't even started yet. A pretty big content creator apparently got super mad on stream while playing Assassin's Creed Shadows because of some people in his chat and called them out live. I watched the crash out on Hypnotic's channel, and as of recording this, I will try to find a clip of it, like individually, but if I can't, then I will be using relevant things that Cowboy says from that clip in Hypnotic's video, and it will be linked in the description. Then Cowboy made a 30-minute video live discussing it, expressing his frustrations with the culture war and basically giving his take in regards to what he believes to be the issue with gaming discourse these days, and more than that, with channels on YouTube that cover culture war stuff, channels that criticize games that are compromised in some way or another, or other types of news in the industry, including also just playing and reviewing them, which is so often disregarded, honestly. But anyway, I'm going to go through his video and I'm going to be clearing up several misconceptions that he has about these channels, but more importantly about the games industry and the gaming discourse. While I do not intend at all to come across as hostile throughout this video, do bear with me because at the end of the day this is a heated topic, and it only gets hotter when people are coming at it from a position of wanting to label people as idiots in two ways. Either because they're the viewers, so in this case you guys, and honestly me as well. After all, I've only been creating content since September. Before that I was just a viewer too, and so according to him, what we see with our very own eyes and what we have felt for years is not actually there. We're just stupid, we're being brainwashed or whatever, or because we are content creators, and as content creators we are the ones doing the brainwashing for talking about these very real things that to the cowboy, again, are not real. We are just making it up. So again, note that I go into this fully wanting to actually extend an olive branch, unlike Cowboy in my honest opinion, who said that he did, but just spent the entire video visibly angry and frustrated, making arguments from emotion instead of logic, despite being the one telling people to step down to reality, and either blatantly lying and misrepresenting the facts, or being woefully uninformed about what he's talking about. I've got good intentions in mind with this video, but as I go through his video, again answering some of his points, I'm going to be real too. I'm going to stand on business, as he likes to say.
Let's discuss. Let's make it a, I mean, hell, we can make it an open invitation for anyone that actually wants to try and stand on business instead of making up little shit to help get their viewers angry.
So without further ado, let's get into the video.
And at the part of the stream we were at, Yasuke was on screen. Now, for those that don't know, Yasuke is a historical figure in Japanese history. He was brought over by the Portuguese and then taken by Nobunaga. Now, there's obviously a lot of iffy records about what happened back then. Some people say he was a retainer. Some people say he was raised up to a samurai. Regardless, I'm not here to talk about that, okay? That's beyond the point. Because Assassin's Creed has always been historical fiction, okay? We never actually punched a pope. We never actually had flying machines. That shouldn't be an issue.
So I agree here, but there's a caveat to this. I'm not saying Cowboy is being disingenuous here, however, this has been an argument that's been brought up when discussing the situation with Assassin's Creed Shadows being insensitive and clashing with Japanese history and culture. Some people like to say the exact same thing, that Assassin's Creed has never been actually historical, it's been historical fiction, and then some of them even share these images that pop up at the start of each Assassin's Creed game, saying that the game is a product of fiction inspired by historical events and characters. Sorry in advance for any viewers that watched my previous video where I spoke about this. I will have to repeat some of my points here. Feel free to skip ahead to the next timestamp if you don't want to hear about it again. Cowboy should definitely listen though, because context matters. While this is true, it's not us or the Japanese people complaining that brought up this matter in regards to historical accuracy, it was Ubisoft and the excess media. When this game was announced a year ago, this was the narrative around it, and the selling point of it was that Shadows would feature the the first playable historic figure in the franchise, the historically accurate legendary Black Samurai. This was their thing, not ours, and I so wish that I had collected receipts of all of the articles and posts at the time that the game was announced. It all crossed my feed while I browsed on social media, but as I said, I began making content in September, so naturally I wasn't collecting receipts for any of this stuff. But I vividly remember even one article from IGN that was so blatantly made to piss people off that it's actually crazy. The caption they used on their social media posts read something along the lines of "Play as the first black LGBTQ+ samurai in history in Assassin's Creed Shadows." This was on Facebook. The article was caked with laugh reactions and negative comments because at this point, it wasn't just that they were trying to pass off the theory of Yasuke being historically a samurai, but now he was gay too, since Ubisoft had recently mentioned that there would be romance options for both Naoe and Yasuke like there were in Valhalla and Odyssey. Honestly, half of these issues having to do with online backlashes and shit shows would be gone if websites like IGN, Kotaku, The Gamer, GameRant, etc. ceased to exist, as they are often the ones overtly pushing a message or agenda while reinforcing the studio's terrible content, going as far as to promote objectively bad games just because it represents their agendas, such as it was last year with Dustborn, Concord, Star Wars Outlaws, and Veilguard. And do you guys remember what was the first thing that IGN posted as soon as possible on the release of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, for example, immediately as the embargo went up? A guide to romance Hans Capon, with a picture of them kissing, which should even be a spoiler by anyone's fucking accounts, in a game full of unconventional mechanics that a lot of players aren't even going to engage with and are probably looking for guides online to help them, like lockpicking, how does the stats work, the stealth, etc. What does IGN post? How to be gay in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. If you don't think that this shit is deliberately done to stoke the fires and push an agenda of their own and literally create backlash online, I've got a bridge to sell you. But anyway, this narrative earlier on was why Ubisoft got into trouble very fast, because the Japanese don't fuck around when it comes to their history and culture. So they began dialing down this narrative, but it never really went away. A popular argument at the time, and that still lasted for a while, was that all that Ubisoft had to do was present this game as the other Assassin's Creed games were presented, as fully fictional. But this is not what they did, and I'm tired of people arguing in defense of this game, purposefully ignoring this very important negative information. And it's not to say that some people wouldn't still have complained, of course they would. It's not even to say that it would have taken away that perception of virtue signaling, because of course it wouldn't. After all, thus far, whenever we went into one of these settings, the games featured a protagonist native to the setting. But with Japan, not only did they decide to use this setting to feature an African character as its main driving force, but then they also had all the other problems that followed it, such as the inconsistencies found in the trailers, showing a huge level of ignorance towards the history and culture that they were using to make a game in. The terrible marketing decisions that followed, like that huge fumble with the collector's edition item or whatever it was with the broken Torii gate, the Chinese buildings in Japan, the thing of letting characters destroy religious shrines, despite that never having been present in previous games, aside from a specific activity in Valhalla that allowed you to steal treasure from Christian monasteries and burning the houses around it. Still, in the middle of all that mayhem, we couldn't destroy a single Christian altar with crosses, nor crosses in graveyards or any of that. And of course in Mirage you couldn't even sneeze near a mosque, let alone damage it. And this shows us that Ubisoft does have these kinds of sensitivities in mind, that they do care about this kind of stuff. They just didn't care about them when it came to Japan, and this is not correct. Either all of it is okay and you can make an argument based on censorship in video games, where a company is just like, no, we will not censor anything, the game is as is, people can do whatever they want, it does not bear any symbology or whatever that we approve of, something like that. Or none of it is okay. And if you employ some of these sensitivities into your games, so for example not being able to take down a cross or not being able to destroy a mosque, then you should do the same thing to Japanese shrines. End of story. Maybe they forgot. Yeah, I'm sure the multi-million-dollar company just fucking forgot something as important as this.
Just fucking slipped his mind.
And I'm sure that despite all of us reminding them in February with a lot of noise online and even attention from Japanese institutions again, they just, once again, forgot and released the game with the ability to still destroy shrines until a patch rolls out. When you take this and then you couple it together with the rest of the issues, it starts honestly painting a picture that it is deliberate. After all, how many mistakes can you make until it stops being a mistake, know what I mean? And of course the situation with romancing Oda Nobunaga's sister is included here. If you look up who this lady was, you will understand precisely why it is so tasteless to let that happen in a game, regardless of the skin color or the gender of the character that we're playing as. We could even be playing as Gabe Newell, that sweet man, and we should still not be able to do this. And that brings me to the main point here in reply to this argument, which is that Assassin's Creed has always been historical fiction where they took cool tidbits of history and respectfully created fictional content around it that was cool for the players and respectful to the culture and history at hand. Never before were we able to misrepresent historical characters to the degree that Shadows does it. And never before did we have Ubisoft come out and be like, hey guys, this is the real deal. We are trying to be more historical than ever before. For the first time ever, you can play as a real person that existed. Like, yes, sure, we were able to soar through the skies of Venice on Leonardo da Vinci's flying machine to kill a Templar in an unscalable fortress. Was it realistic? No. Was it cool though? Yes. And was it disrespectful? Of course not. Banging Oishi, Oda Nobunaga's sister, on the other hand, is fucking stupid. It's unrealistic, it's not cool, and it is disrespectful. So I'd have to say that I totally reject this notion that just saying that Assassin's Creed has always been historical fiction suddenly makes it all okay, when contextually these things are not the same at all. Even when they made George Washington into an evil tyrant king, they did it in a DLC where it was actually fantasy and we could turn into wolves and eagles and shit. And you know what the funniest thing about all of this is? It is that if it was simply acknowledged as a problem, most of us would stop talking about it tomorrow, because the problem would have been acknowledged and hopefully Ubisoft would have course corrected before allowing this to happen again in the future, and also wouldn't be profiting from the goddamn situation. Not that they're profiting that much when their sales are so fucked up that they have to advertise player numbers instead of sales, but still, you know, it's like watching a thief get away with stealing a wallet with only $5 instead of 500. They still don't like watching people get away with shit like this. Most of this discourse would stop. Then the only people who would stay mad and keep talking about it would probably be the people with more ties to Japanese history and culture, perhaps Japanese people themselves, and with a reason to do so. But instead, people like Cowboy are not only just ignoring the issue, they are actively defending it without a shred of reason or valid argumentation, just blanketing it with strawmen and non-arguments like, oh, it's never been historically accurate before, as if that was supposed to make it okay. Like, yeah, of course it hasn't been historically accurate before. Gee, I wonder what changed, despite the fact that the series has featured black protagonists and side characters before to great success. I wonder what changed. Anyway, I talk more about this in my previous video on screen right now, link in the description and top comment by the way, giving an example of how Ubisoft turned a devastating earthquake in Portuguese history that leveled a city and destroyed lives into a parkour playground and plot device for one of their games, and it still was not offensive or disrespectful because they knew how to handle this stuff properly, respectfully, and with purpose. Three things that banging Oda Nobunaga's sister or glazing Yasuke as a historically accurate samurai does not have. This is the stuff that they don't mention when bringing up this weak argument. They also don't mention the entire drama with Japan, how they have been actively making statements and taking action against Shadows for nearly a year already. How does this not raise enough red flags for people to at least get the signal that yes, there is a problem in here, and no, it's not the people online who are mad at the black guy, it's not that, it's an actual cultural and historical problem. I know that Japan can be strict with these things, but something has been breached here that wasn't breached before. Look at all the other media that features Japan as a setting, and even Yasuke himself, such as that anime on Netflix. You don't see this stuff happening over there. You don't see this stuff happening even on games that let you play as a black character if it is your wish to do so, like in Rise of the Ronin. I even featured some footage like that in my previous previous video, I hopped into Rise of the Ronin, went into the character editor, and made him a black guy to play around with and record some footage in the open world. Obviously, Rise of the Ronin didn't get into trouble. Ghost of Tsushima, made fully by Westerners and without like 7 different DEI departments that Ubisoft has on board for cultural and historic sensitivity and of course diversity, equity and inclusion, didn't get into trouble either. In fact, it was the opposite. They were appointed ambassadors of the Tsushima Island. In Nioh, the first game, you play as a white guy based on William Adams, of whom there are records of being made samurai. But in the game, there weren't even any claims of the such because it's purely fictional. It's a game packed with mythology. It just so happens that you play as a character based on him. And in the sequel, you can create whatever you want. White, black, Mexican, Indian, Portuguese, Shrek, whatever you want. Nioh 2 even features Yasuke in the goddamn game as a side character. You didn't see Japan or the internet shitting on it, did you? Go back, look at it, and try to understand why. I can't feed this to you. If I tell you why, you're just going to say that I'm making it up, so go look at it for yourself and draw your conclusions. What I can say is that these companies did not come out and announce their games with marketing material going off about how this is historic and this is a real depiction of historical character and blah 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 blah, shape the history of Japan, etc. Ubisoft just went and shot themselves in the foot while all of these other companies just made fun, fictional-ass games without modernisms or other garbage trying to misrepresent Japan, especially the history of Japan. But let's move on. We've spent way too much time already on this little point alone, but it does honestly show a picture of what's going to come in this video. A lot of Cowboy's video is about flapping around on the surface of the issue without acknowledging the actual problem underneath. When people are on two completely different realities, coming to an understanding is virtually impossible, but whatever. Even if I can't get through to Cowboy, maybe I can get through to other people watching, so let's keep going.
But so we have people in stream. There were 2 comments in particular that popped up. We had, I guess this is the new 2K, and then better make sure the black guy doesn't pull out the Glock. Both those people got timed out. And then we had other comments that I'm not going to repeat. There's some comments that I have pinned on Blue Sky that were just outright racism, like just slurs. And those, thankfully, those get held. Those don't even make it into chat because we got filters.
This is just a little aside. Obviously, coming out with straight up slurs is not going to be comedic, but honestly, this guy is timing out people for saying, I guess this is a new 2K. Like, shit, that's pretty goddamn funny, actually. I mean, I get it, you know, black people basketball, stereotype. Who cares though? It's not racism, it's just a totally inoffensive joke, and like, that's the life while streaming. People like to come on, have some fun, make some jokes, keep things light, have some inoffensive laughs, and there is no problem with that. This guy is so ideologically captured or something that he can't even just laugh or find humor in basic shit like this. You'd have a heart attack if you watched the Chappelle Show.
Nasty! Imagine that. 2 women touching on each other's titty balls.
He will legitimately see a non-binary character in feudal Japan and think that you are bigoted as hell for laughing at it, so you need a timeout. And I think that is so sad and totally out of touch with reality, alongside a lot of other examples that will be coming up. You can't stop people from finding funny shit to be funny. You gotta loosen up.
Basically in like the opening cutscene, and we had people that were upset specifically about the existence of a black guy in a Japanese setting. This had nothing to do with Ubisoft's microtransactions, had nothing to do with optimization, had nothing to do with the setting. It was simply black dude in a Japanese game. And we called that out. We said, get the fuck out. If you don't like it here, fucking leave. Everyone is tired of listening to this shit. Get the fuck out. And then of course your typical grifters that like to make up bullshit. You know, oh, woke leftist cowboy is, I don't know, shilling for Ubisoft and blah, blah, blah. Because none of them actually have a point to stand on. They're all little, you know, weak-willed men that like to hide behind avatars or made-up names, and they don't actually stand on business. They don't. They probably don't stand at all. I can't imagine most of these people are active. They probably don't go to the gym. They probably don't work out. They probably just sit inside all day and hide. But that's beyond the point.
Sorry about the audio, guys. I'm trying to speed things up here a bit so it doesn't go on for too long. And also, sorry for that bit of cringe at the end there. I could have cut it out, but it was just too funny. Like, what do you want me to do? Unlike Cowboy, I don't have anything against a bit of inoffensive humor. So in this section here, when he talks about that whole thing about hiding behind avatars, he might have actually been referring directly to Hypnotic, since he did make a video reacting to his original Crashout. I find it ironic how he says that he made things up because that's that's what grifters do, but in reality, he actually didn't. Here's a snippet from Hypnotic's reaction video. Please remember and keep in mind what Cowboy says.
I don't give a fuck what your opinion is of this game. I don't care. Your opinion is worthless to me. The quality of health of my morning shit had a bigger impact on my thought process today than you being upset that there's a black guy in Assassin's Creed. So shut the fuck up. All right? We're not doing this shit. It's a fucking video game. If you are upset that there's a black guy in a video game, fuck off.
So, Cowboy here says that people were upset about a black guy in a Japanese setting. First of all, just a few minutes ago he was mentioning jokes, which are the things that he saw and muted. The things with the slurs, he didn't see them because they got filtered out.
There's some comments that I have pinned on Blue Sky that were just outright racism, like just slurs. And those, thankfully, those get held. Those don't even make it into chat because we got filters.
I'm sure that alongside the jokes there must have also been some people criticizing, but none of this is being upset. People weren't upset about a black guy in Japan, people were laughing at it and making jokes, and Cowboy was the one getting upset that people were laughing and making jokes that in his mind are racist and insensitive. He's getting triggered for no good reason. He sees this stuff and he can't remain calm, normal, logical, so he snapped. And even then it's all within the context that it's in. This isn't just a black guy in Japan. Like I didn't get a single comment upset at me over my Rise of the Ronin footage with my handmade Yasuke, which, by the way, looks way cooler than Ubisoft's.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn times.
As I mentioned in the previous reply and in my full previous video, this isn't an isolated thing. Ubisoft has been screwing up for a long time. They've also been shady and anti-consumer, and they've also blatantly lied to us to cover their asses, even in bigger, shadier ways, like when they got that ex-Sweet Baby Inc. employee to co-write an article for the New York Post saying that Assassin's Creed Shadows' reception had been amazing actually, and that Japan was behind it, and the only people complaining were bigoted white Westerners and posers, while there was no shortage of Japanese content creators making their voices heard online. And then we got to see what we saw, with institutions and even the government getting involved. Like, I don't know if maybe the Cowboy saw this article back then and then he thought, well, of course it's the white guys, it's only people who are getting upset, it's the chuds, nobody else would be mad at this. But if this is the case, then he needs to come back to reality himself. When people come out and say shit like, oh, these people are just upset at a black guy in a Japanese setting, it really makes me wonder if they even know what they're talking about, because it shows a huge degree of being out of the loop and a massive disconnect with the gaming space and what people actually think of Ubisoft in general. So let me reiterate here. Ubisoft is very likely the EA of this generation. It's the company with the least trust and least amount of good faith from the gaming community, and their actions outside of the game itself have shown that right off the get-go. The decision for making Yasuke the protagonist of this game wasn't some genuine decision born out of true creative freedom and desire to tell the story of this mysterious black man who arrived in Japan as a slave from the Jesuits and ended up serving Oda Nobunaga, and then after the Honnoji incident was left alive by Mitsuhide under pretty insulting motives, to be honest, and then was sent back to the Jesuits, never to be heard from again. We know this wasn't what drove Ubisoft to make this decision. We can see it in the way that the story plays. Look how ridiculous it is. He touches down on Japan and he immediately knows the language. 6 months later, he's already a fully trained, fully formed samurai. There isn't even any sauce and spice in the story. Like, there is actually a good story somewhere in here, in this concept of making a game about Yasuke. But Ubisoft didn't give a shit about that. They just wanted to do what they snapped it right. They snapped it right into place. Here it is. He knows Japanese. He's talking to Oda Nobunaga, first time that he's meeting him. And 5 seconds later, after a fucking blackout on the screen, he's a fully formed samurai and Oda Nobunaga's right-hand man. You gotta understand, this isn't just ridiculous, it's funny. So what is your problem with the premise of people finding it tacky, to say the least, that Ubisoft would do this instead of exploring Japanese legends and giving people exactly what they want, potentially with a bit more historical accuracy mixed in with a fiction, such as the older games used to do, instead of having to bend the plot backwards and basic fucking sense in several instances, like him arriving in Japan and already knowing the language, just to have a glazed black playable protagonist. But anyway, more interestingly, as you saw in that clip of the original Crashout, Cowboy said precisely that people were mad merely because he was black, and Hypnotic right rightfully called that out as a total misrepresentation of the argument.
Alright, we're not doing this shit. It's a fucking video game. If you are upset that there's a black guy in a video game, fuck off. I don't want you here.
That is literally downplaying the entire argument, by the way. That is downplaying. See, this is what they do. Again, I don't know what his politics are, but this is what I see the left do a lot of the time, right? And sometimes I see the right do it too, but for the most part, it is the left, like 95% of the time. What they do is they take your argument and they try to downplay it into very simplistic boxes, right? So if you have multiple issues with Assassin's Creed Shadows, you can talk about the AI being terrible, the facial animations being garbage, the voice acting being atrocious, literally atrocious, the dialogue being horrible, Yasuke being unfitting, just completely throwing off the entire story. He feels out of place the entire time. You can talk about all these things and they'll take all of that and they'll say, so you just don't like a black guy being in Japan, huh?
Which is true. If the mere existence of a black playable protagonist is the problem, then you need to explain how is it that previous Assassin's Creed games with black characters have come and gone with great success, and do the same for other games with black characters as well for that matter, because if that was really the issue, then this would be a major thing that would stick out like a sore thumb in this industry. But it's just not. This is just bullshit, and a lot of people like to drop this as an excuse, but it's just completely fucking baseless. It's a disingenuous scapegoat and a strawman to avoid talking about the real problems in these specific situations where it does happen, because those are actually hard and require critical thinking. They require people to climb up out of their asses and listen to people, and not take immediate offense as soon as someone says something that they've been indoctrinated to find so offensive that it requires an immediate shutdown, or a mute, or a ban, or a block on Twitter. It requires going past that comfort zone and engage with arguments. Cowboy says none of these people he calls grifters, and I'm sure he'd call me one too despite backing up the claims that I make, none of them have any points to make. None of them stand on business. We're just weak-willed men and we don't lift. For the sake of carrying on to take all of this and respond to it as reasonably and charitably as I can, I'm going to ignore the petty ad hominem shit and simply state the fact here that I don't see Cowboy engaging with anything that people are saying about this game. He's the one running away from having a serious conversation and tackling this shit earnestly. Instead of backing up his claims, rationalizing precisely why is it that none of our points are valid, he just distills it all down to racism and that's it. And honestly, he gets mad that Hypnotic kinda semi-labels him as one of these types of lefty people online, but he only did it because this behavior is within that precise same pattern where whenever these issues come up, whenever there's a conversation to be had, the response is just to label it all as bigotry. Because hey, if you label it as shit like that, then you don't have to answer to anything. I mean, why would you ever engage with bigotry, right? So you don't have to say anything. You just throw that out there, then you just throw the usual insults and dismissals, you're not a real man, and I can't even imagine these people are able to get up. Like, what is this, fucking kindergarten? Where are you, fucking 13 years old or some shit? To that effect, Cowboy's actions are fitting him into that label. But let's keep going.
So what actually happened is we had people that were upset about a black guy on the screen, and they were called out. They were called out live, and that needs to happen more.
Well, there it is again. I didn't even need to go and get the clip from Hypnotic's reaction. He actually brings that shit up right here again, that people were merely upset about a black guy on screen. But hey, in the interest of being good faith, I'll even grant that. He definitely did have some people like that on stream that night, like the ones who got filtered out for using slurs. But again, the issue remains that Cowboy drags everyone into that same box. The people just doing jokes or urging discussion in regards to the appropriate or inappropriate decision of having Yasuke as the protagonist in the exact way that he was used do not belong in that same box. And it's this attitude of lumping everyone in that is causing so many people to ditch creators, personalities, celebrities, politicians, etc. who say and do the exact same shit that Cowboy is doing right here. And in Cowboy's case, it's even more obnoxious because he has the gall to say that they are the ones who don't stand on business or have anything to say or to back up their claims, so they have to resort to making shit up while pulling a Johnny Bravo and not actually answering any argument that has been put forth, be it on Twitter or on his fucking chats or on YouTube.
Why did I get so fucking angry? Let's talk about it. Because, bro, it's obnoxious. It's obnoxious. I mean, like, for real, let's talk about the last year in gaming. Fucking Stellar Blade drama. Because there was a titty window added. Oh, they're censoring. They're taking away the gooning.
Here we go again, this biased selective recollection. If Cowboy was being genuine and standing on business, then he would actually tell his audience the truth about the entire Stellar Blade controversy. The studio added extra bit of fabric to a couple of outfits at the launch of the game. Some people complained about censorship, it didn't matter. Soon after launch, the company added the outfits that were censored in new variants without the little piece of fabric that was covering up whatever they added. And then throughout the summer they added even more outfits, some of them even more revealing than the ones already in the game. This was not the controversy with Stellar Blade. The controversy with Stellar Blade happened far before that. Stellar Blade had been mired in controversy, and it wasn't because of the fucking grifters or whatever that he loves to hate so much. It was because of pussies and Karens finding the design of the character to be offensive or harmful in some way, shape or form. Including of course games media, with sites like IGN saying that the character design in Stellar Blade could only have been made by someone who has never seen a real woman in life. Meanwhile, the studio itself has women working in it, and Eve was modeled after a model. But whatever, doesn't matter, you know, carrying on. As I said, Karens and pussies complaining that the design of the character was offensive or harmful in some way, shape or form. And basically I've talked about this kind of matter in a couple of videos as well. It's something that depends. There's various narratives that attack beauty and attractiveness in entertainment. Some are focused on combating the male gaze, which is hypocritical, proven by articles like this, where even the same media outlets speaking about this supposed male gaze will then encourage people to thirst over fictional characters such as male characters like Quimir, Sauron, Daemon Targaryen, etc., targeting of course women and gay people. So basically, to this brand of activist, the driving force and concept of the male gaze is just a smokescreen, because if you're a woman, trans, queer, gay, bisexual or non-binary, then you're not only allowed to thirst after characters and actors, but you are encouraged to do so. The only people who can't do this are straight men. Another narrative is related to how a character like Eve is setting unrealistic and harmful body standards for women because, well, most women just don't look like that. And yes, you guessed it, it's just more hypocritical bullshit, because no one is batting an eye to characters like Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth, naked on screen with a body so difficult to attain that he was at a point of fainting when going without food or water for nearly 3 days. It's just as unattainable for men as most men look nothing like him, or most male video game characters for that matter. And one other has to do with representation. Basically, characters should not look like Eve because, as it is with the previous narrative, these are difficult bodies to achieve. One would even say that they're privileged bodies and features for one to have, so we should represent those less fortunate instead, those less featured, those less privileged. But this is so poorly thought out in so many ways that I could make an entire video on representation, which I will, sooner or later. But just for some quick bullet points so Cowboy doesn't say that I don't stand on business, we have for example the complete dissonance with the market. Representation doesn't translate to sales. Most people aren't looking to play as themselves, and by themselves in this case I'm talking about boring looking people. Like, I don't look like a fucking superhero, therefore I don't want a superhero to look like me. I want a superhero to look like a superhero. Basically, when it comes to these hyper-fictionalized settings, you know, settings of great action and adventure and excitement, they want to play as someone that looks cool. And usually, part of coolness is to be relatively good looking, or at least visually appealing. For example, with Star Wars Outlaws, you want to play as someone who looks fantastic, you don't want to play as Cassie from HR. Another thing is the misconception that this is something that we must do, as if video games owed anything to anyone, as if video games must be utilized by activists to impact society, to bring about social change, as if game or game creators must have that responsibility. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is just batshit insane. Entertainment should be there to entertain, and if you as an individual can only be entertained when your physical self and your very own core values and whatnot are being represented on a screen, then you need to mellow out and treat yourself. And by treat yourself, I mean in a therapist. You're part of a very tiny minority. This is not what the market demands, and it's also a very unhealthy thing for people to not be able to find value in things or people that don't reflect them. And this goes double when that reflection is bogged down to things as irrelevant and immutable as gender, sexuality, or race. It's one of those things that make no financial sense whatsoever, and that are prime examples of actual crying and whinging in our industry, because it's literally people seeing good-looking appealing characters, at times like with Stellar Blade, characters designed to look attractive, and it's not just Eve either, Adam also looks very attractive, and getting mad that the characters look good. then making changes to the industry from within with unnatural programs and initiatives that force an unwanted change. That makes no sense. And they do this with disingenuous arguments that are based on emotion, and they use them to manipulate people, and that's pretty much how you get this stuff to even work out in the first place. You appeal to people's good nature of wanting to be nice, of wanting to be charitable and tolerant, etc. So you say, oh look, what about fat people? They deserve to see themselves as well, right? Just as an example of an argument. You know, like, fat people, they deserve representation too, you know, they get bullied and this and that and the other, all these social issues, blah 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 blah. Let's alter the media, and if we alter the media, maybe we'll bullshit it into reality. It's not how it works. But of course, when it's framed this way, some people initially always went with, oh well, alright, okay, sure, I mean, it's no big deal anyway, I guess, it's just one game or one show or one whatever. But then, well, you know how it is, activists are activists, so they never stop. So this just keeps growing, and the narrative becomes further and further solidified that if you support it, you are a good person, and if you don't, or if you just question it, then you're a bigot. And then eventually, it's not just one game or one show or one movie or even one set of each. It's nearly every goddamn thing in the main part of the industry. So for example, in gaming, it's the AAA space, and in TV shows we have Disney pushing this to hell and back. And eventually people start snapping because their tolerance was taken advantage of. But at this point I'm getting way ahead of myself, so let's get back to the Cowboys clips. We will circle back to this tolerance and representation point later. Point is that Stellar Blade was a whole mix of things before a couple of the outfits got censored, and it was because of activists and people on the other side, on Cowboys' side per se. It's very interesting that he doesn't call that out, but still brings it up as an argument as if it was our fault, as if it was us causing it. It was even during this drama before launch that cursed image got shared from Microsoft showing all of the creative restrictions that they impose on the creation of their Xbox Studios games. Compared to this, the drama with the censored outfits was nothing. Stellar Blade still ended up successful and praised. This was a non-issue from the side that Cowboy is talking shit about.
Elden Ring drama. Because, oh, they hid it behind a boss. They hid it behind a fucking boss and it's too expensive.
I have no idea what he's talking about here. Honestly, this has nothing to do with the culture war, and if it did, I would wager that it wouldn't be coming from our side of things either, because it wasn't even about the game being expensive, it was about it being locked behind a difficult boss to get to. A boss that, if I'm not mistaken, might not even have been a part of the main story. It had very low completion rate in the trophies and achievements, and people who generally whine about difficulty in Souls games and how it should be more accessible to more people by having difficulty options are not us, the supposedly evil, manipulative, right-wing grift lords. That's some weak shit from somewhere else. For the most part though, I don't even remember any drama at all here, just memes, and actually a very wholesome few days following it, with Elden Ring players laying down their summon signs in front of the boss arena to help those players struggling with it to beat it and have access to the DLC area once it launched. What did happen around this time, and that of course Cowboy failed to mention here because it wasn't convenient for him, was the media meltdown about Black Myth Wukong, where they went as far as to fabricate lies, mistranslating messages and statements to make developers look like fucking creepy-ass deviants, when in reality it was all a bunch of bullshit targeting the game for denying the consultation from Sweet Baby Inc. and for getting a lot of traction from gamers who were sick of the messaging from one way or another in their games. Happily standing behind Black Myth Wukong as an example to the industry of what people want: good-looking, fun, original games with nothing but the desire to make a really good game powering it. The game then releases, and of course some game journals even give it a bad rating, citing a lack of diversity and inclusion as a flaw. Diversity and inclusion in a fucking Chinese mythology monkey game. Do I even need to say more? Should I even mention the articles attacking us, you know, the people who enjoyed the game, calling us toxic, chud, right-wing people just for liking this game? Fucking insane.
Fucking, let me actually, I could probably come up with drama for every fucking game we had, I bet. Let me pull up a playlist of the last year. Stalker 2, people were upset just because the fact that it was a Ukrainian studio, so that got a bunch of shit.
Despite saying he could find a drama for every game from last year, he has to pull up a list of games and then go through it to call out some nonsense like the Stalker 2 thing with the Ukrainian studio, which I had heard of like once and then never heard of it again for the entire month. I didn't even remember this being a thing. At this time, people were mostly just talking about Veilguard. I'm sorry to say, but my dude, a few random people saying some random shit on the internet isn't a drama. It's just a few random dudes. In the end, if I look back to Stalker 2, what I associate with it when it comes to the discourse online is people generally liking a game that a lot of folks thought that was actually going to fail because of having been in some sort of development hell situation where it was meant to come out years ago already, but not having done so for obvious reasons. You want 2024 dramas, you got like Dustborn and Concord, for example. Concord being the biggest failure in the industry so far, and Dustborn being a literal government-funded piece of propaganda from a studio whose director is so obsessed with weird race shit that he finds it regrettable that his studio, located in Norway, is packed with mostly white people. Now just imagine saying that shit in reverse. Also, there was the drama with Star Wars Outlaws, a game so bad in its core that it defies logic, but that game journalists wanted to push on people anyway because of course, again, with the representation nonsense, where it was important for female and Latino representation in Star Wars. The problem is that female and Latino representation are not enough to sell a game and make it good. You need a good story, you need good writing, you need a polished product, and preferably game design that makes sense in the genre that you're building it in. If it's a third-person shooter, put in third-person shooting mechanics. We couldn't even climb up a ladder without dropping a weapon on the floor. Sometimes the issues are so simple. It's like, you want to do representation and diversity. Fine, do it in a meaningful way, and do it in a way that it works, and make a good game out of it, but they just don't know how to do both because they're hiring activists. Activists don't know how to fucking make games.
Dragon Age, people were upset that there was a character who went by they, them in the game, so that got a bunch of shit.
Again, more disingenuous downplaying of the actual drama surrounding Dragon Age Veilguard, something that started with insults towards the fanbase, banning people for voicing opinions on the look of the trailers, and then another insult to Dragon Age as a franchise and a massive letdown as an RPG. I've already more than covered Dragon Age on this channel. If you're interested, feel free to check out this video or my breakdown videos on the game, acting as reviews, one midway through the game and one after completing it, and a character breakdown of Tosh and what the developers were trying to go for in her case and why it failed miserably. Again, not even sure if he's being disingenuous or if he's just woefully uninformed. If this is the case, then he should stop acting as if he knows what the fuck he's talking about and research these things before misrepresenting what the hell has been going on to his entire audience. And I know this may sound somewhat hostile, but it's honestly for his own good. People don't like shit being misrepresented. The thing is, if you are in support of the game, if you loved it, for example, and if you think the bad evil grifters were just attacking the game, if you think these characters, the writing, the storytelling were at their best or at least up to Dragon Age standards, and if you believe the obnoxious virtue signaling and modern deisms injected into the game, breaking immersion, were actually fantastic and very good, then go ahead and say that. Detail that, make a video, give your take, stand on business as you like to say, and back it up with, arguments. But this is just fake shit. Then he gets mad that people call him a shill.
We had fucking Avowed, which came out. People were upset about Avowed because the existence of pronouns was offensive.
I guess this is just a trend at this point. He will never address any of these situations with what actually fucking happened. This is actually a meme at this point. Most of Avowed's backlash wasn't even now, it was back in December when an unhinged developer took to Twitter to talk shit at Grums and Elon Musk. And you know what? Go for it. You wanna talk shit to Elon Musk and Grums? Do it. They're big boys, they can take it. But then he goes full mask off, full unhinged, starts even targeting normal people like this fan here who just wants to play a game. No, we can't have that here. Representation and diversity must be pushed at maximum. We must go harder and harder because of people like this random fan right here who just wants to play a fucking video game. How does he dare to expect that a video game should be a video game where the player can escape into an immersive adventure in a fantasy land instead of just being a fucking propaganda machine pushing for social impact? It's absolutely inadmissible that you would expect that from a video game. And if you disagree, you are the problem. At this point, Matt Hansen even went off about how the industry has too many crusty white dudes in it and he wants to prioritize black people for hiring positions, which is discrimination. And again, imagine if it was said in reverse. But I bet Cowboy Man over here is not going to acknowledge it as such. I mean, so far, every goddamn thing that has happened that didn't look favorable to his side has gone by completely unacknowledged. Not a single fucking thing. Every single drama, every single backlash, every single thing that people have come together to criticize or protest, it was all whipped out of someone's asshole. Following this nonsense, Obsidian then doubles down and starts banning people from forums for simply asking what would be done with Matt Hansen, would there be an apology, etc. Which is fairly normal after the guy loses his shit on social media. But worse than that, the guy also painted his game in a bad light. Believe it or not, Cowboy, people don't get excited when they hear that a game is getting advertised with terms such as woke mind virus and unhinged rants about pushing for maximum diversity and all that. Also, let's not forget how he said that he couldn't wait for sad little shits to see the default, presumably the default pronoun in the game or something else that we never really got to see. This is like going to a fucking restaurant and hearing the owner saying that whatever dish that you're about to order is going to have some part of it featuring either semi-spoiled ingredients or maybe something along the lines of telling you that whatever you order, some part of it is going to be taken away to be given to charity, but you're going to pay full price for it anyway. And that's if we don't use a straight up example of a waiter pretty much telling you that whatever you order, part of it is going to taste like shit, which is actually the perception that a lot of people are more and more waking up to every day. Because again, we see it. Every day we see it. These new pieces of media, they come out, whatever it is, Star Wars, Marvel, whatever the fuck it is, it's all shit these days. And in the gaming industry, holy fuck, the more these studios focus on this kind of thing, the worse the games get. The only good example people can come up with is Baldur's Gate 3, and that's a completely different situation, where this kind of stuff was added afterwards via a patch, after building an incredibly good product first. Most people would be walking out of that fucking restaurant. And so naturally a lot of people just started asking normal questions about Avowed, like, hey fellas, is this game going to be good? I don't mind woke stuff, but I don't know man, if it's too much then I don't know about that. And Obsidian's response was to just start banning people. And no matter how much you want to protest this, people have valid reasons to have concerns when they start seeing pronouns and shit in menus, because if you look at these games featuring this shit, you start following a pattern that leads to pretty troubling outcomes. And there's also another argument to be had here, where if you're so ideologically captured that you need to put pronouns in a medievalish fantasy setting where they just don't belong because they clash with the setting due to how they are such a contemporary modern thing, then it's likely that you're also ideologically captured enough to have more instances of this modernity ruining character dialogues and storylines, designs, etc. by focusing on random shit instead of compelling plots, such as what happened with Tosh and Veilguard. And it could also mean that your game is compromised enough by this kind of thing that other cool aspects such as grit and tension and mature writing, mature presentation and direction are gone from your game because you're too afraid of offending people, or you're trying to appeal more to the soft modern audience, as it was with Veilguard as well, where even the factions were affected. The Wardens lost their grimdark aspect, the assassins weren't assassins anymore, the thieves and treasure hunters weren't thieves and treasure hunters anymore either because it's not socially acceptable. Blood magic was removed from player use and completely changed narratively because the devs just ingrained into their own heads that only a villain would make use of such an evil thing as blood magic. These are seemingly small things, but they are there, and people take notice. I know it sounds like a lot coming from just a mere pronoun menu, but a pronoun menu does align with an ideology, so there's a chance that more aspects of that ideology are going to be present there. It just is what it is, my dude. People see this stuff and they wonder, and then they question. They have full right and reason to do so, and sadly people like Cowboy demonize them outright when sometimes they're not even immediately crossing these games off, because they can think back to Baldur's Gate 3 for example. They'll be like, well, Larian did add pronouns in the post-launch patch and the game is still good, so maybe this will be good too. I am just concerned. And then people like Cowboy here and other content creators or the access media or the people people, in charge of Obsidian who started banning everyone, what do? Well, they just shut everything down. They just call everybody a bigot and a grifter and this and then the other. They shut down the conversation. They say you are not allowed to think this, you are not allowed to say this is this is that, this is phobic. And then what do these people do? They go and find the channels dealing in common sense and they start listening to them. What the fuck do you expect to happen?
We had people that were upset about KCD because there was a single gay relationship you could have in the game.
Lines like these are what make me think that Cowboy is just out of the loop in some of these and not being purposefully disingenuous. Like he just has no fucking clue what's going on. He doesn't even follow these things. He doesn't actually look into them. He's woefully uninformed because the drama in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 went wildly beyond just a gay romance. At some point, some people, fandom pulse, did try to pass the game as something promoting, how do I say this without getting blacklisted on YouTube? Child sodomy, because of a codex entry in the game talking about the character that Hans is based on being 14 years old, which I did think was a bit ridiculous when they were clearly portrayed by adults and as adults. I look at the codex in KCD2 the same way that I look at the database in old Assassin's Creed games. They are there to provide real information about the historic places that we get to see, but are not straight up information on the characters themselves that we are playing as. If we can even see, for example, the design on the codex looks nothing like the character of Hans Capon. But anyway, beyond this, KCD2's situation was a big and divisive one, and it also involved a lot of blame by part of the director who wouldn't shut the fuck up and stop getting into more drama on social media day after day. Most people in my comment sections, whenever I discussed these issues, the ones that weren't going to play KCD2, at least not at launch, were stating that it was because of the director's comments and attitude. I also have a separate video talking about this in full, so I'm not going to go over all of it here, otherwise this video is going to get way too long. I'm not even going to be able to do this entire response in one full part. Basic bullet points of the situation is that, for example, same-sex options in RPGs have existed since forever, but the case of Henry and Hans Capon are not the same as that, usually you got a new RPG, you got a blank slate character, the characters are able to have same-sex romances, it's whatever, you choose whatever you want to play as. But Henry and Hans, and especially Henry in this case, had already been established as a straight character, so there was a change from one game to the other. And once upon a time, this change may not even have been that much of a big deal, but the fact is that right now there is a very sensitive climate around the industry, and this has sadly led to this kind of thing to happen where people are on high alert, so to speak, to anything that can come across as politically or ideologically motivated. And this climate has not been set by ourselves. This hasn't been set by gamers. Companies have invited this toxic divisiveness into the space, and now we all sadly have to live with the realities of it. Far be it from me to give advice to someone way older and way more successful than me, but the best way to pave the way out of this toxic divisive climate is to be honest about the situations, to not be unfair, to understand where these issues are coming from, to understand that there's reasons for reasonable people to take issue and speak up, even when they still buy the games or they wait for a sale, or even if they choose not to support them. Everyone is well within their right to boycott whatever the fuck game they want to boycott, because again, dismissing it and labeling them as vile-ists and phobes does not help. It only feeds more toxicity and divisiveness. Looking at this situation and automatically labeling it as homophobia is retard brain stuff, you know what I mean? That's not the issue here, and that's not for me to be I'm not going to be disingenuous with you right now and tell you that there are not actual legitimate homophobes out there who actually don't want to touch the game because of a gay character. Of course these people exist, absolutely they do, I'm not saying they don't, but they have never represented a majority big enough to cause a big fucking drama online. They simply attach themselves to the people who do have a reasonable reason to have a problem with this, which has nothing to do with the homosexuality part. It has to do with these companies finessing us, fucking with us, forcing behaviors on us, pushing this common ideology further and further into the space. People don't want to support it. When things are getting so crazy that some games are already turning out so bad, people don't want to support this kind of stuff. It is as simple as that. And so they see a game that's doing this and they say, you know what, I'm not going to support this, and I'm going to speak out and I'm going to say why. And they have a reason to do so.
And now people are upset about shadows because there's gay stuff and a black guy.
Sure, whatever, we already went over this, and for more info on this, you can check out this video which covers a chunk of it.
And honestly, and this is the fun thing, right? If y'all have friends that don't watch streams, if y'all have friends that just play video games, that don't fuck with social media, ask them about this shit. Like, yo, did you hear about the Stellar Blade drama? Did you hear about the Assassin's Creed drama? And most of them are gonna be like, what are you talking about? Is the game, is it bad? And you're like, no, there's a black samurai and you can bang Nobunaga's sister. They're gonna look like Walter White in that Breaking Bad meme where they're like, Jesse, what the fuck are you talking about? Normal people don't get upset about this shit. Okay? This is a manufactured issue in the online space by grifters.
He could not be any more wrong with what he just said here. First of all, I'm one of these normal people who supposedly didn't care about any of this just because I didn't openly talk about it. People like Cowboy downplay just how much normal people absolutely do care about these issues. Granted, they're not out there on social media getting into posts and replies and videos about it, but a lot of people absolutely do care about these topics far more than it looks like. It's just that they don't talk about it online, and this is for various reasons. Mainly because it's just not worth getting into it online. A lot of people, they care about gaming, they care about these issues, but they don't care enough that they're going to bother themselves, get off their little 9-to-5 job and all of the other worries that they have on their heads, and now they're going to get on Twitter and get into arguments instead of doing something else. But when the time comes to vote for it, whether that be electorally, like when the elections come around, or voting for it with their wallets in the sense of supporting or not supporting products, then they show up and they show just how much they care. And I think that we have seen that effect very clearly on both of those sides last year. The elections in America showed just how much people care about how far and how crazy this far-left ideology has gone, and the several ways that it has spread into entertainment, the workplace, corporations, education, etc. And in the case of games, well, the games that were the most overt with these kinds of ideas and items were the ones that failed the hardest. A lot of people keep this to themselves because it is what it is. Talking about these things became so taboo over the past few years that people preferred to keep it to themselves instead of having to deal with weird looks or aggression from friends who were so indoctrinated and exaggerative that disagreeing ever so slightly with their super progressive talking points was a huge offense. It still is. It's more socially acceptable to speak up now for sure, and less prosecuted online as the cancel culture has lost some of its momentum, but there's still a lot of radicalized people out there. Just look at what's happening right now in America with the attacks on Tesla dealerships and random Tesla vehicles out there. It's also something that kind of snuck up on people. This is where I'm bringing back that point about tolerance and representation that I mentioned before. A lot of people tolerated a lot of these things in the beginning because they were acceptable in some way, shape, or form. That's also just how human nature is, most people don't want to look like the bad guys in the first place. Most people are nice by nature, and this was always very manipulated to look that way, where even if you just simply question some of these things, you are already being a bad person. Again, disingenuous manipulation of situations, feelings, and emotions as arguments. Then it was also the aspect that initially things seemed fine. It was like, oh, hey, look, there's this character, and this is to add to diversity and a bit of representation to people who aren't represented in media. And you're like, okay, sure, yeah, whatever, yeah, sure, I never saw one, I guess. Suddenly, there's another one, and another one after that, and suddenly the narrative about representation becomes even worse, and now it's about privileges and shit like that, which is even more retarded because it implies that media up until now was being made to represent white people, for example. For white people to sit at home and pat themselves on the back like, ah yes, it's so nice to be represented in yet another piece of media, when it had nothing to do with any of that shit. Like, for example, the bastardization of the Rings of Power was done for that purpose, with that kind of argument behind it. I'm way too lazy to go look it up right now and download it to put it here, but there's these funny montages out there of the amount of goddamn times that the word diversity and representation was brought up during interviews and promotional material of the Rings of Power. If only they had focused on making a good fucking show instead, it wouldn't have been such a miserable flop. Lord of the Rings characters didn't look the way that they look to appease white people, to comfort them, or to make them feel good and important and fondle their balls. They looked the way that they looked because that's how they were supposed to look. Those were the characters' descriptions, as well as the descriptions of the lands that they inhabited. And of course, all of it a product of what Tolkien took inspiration from. And that's just one example that can be applied broadly across film, TV show, and video game industries. This notion of representation, that shit that we watch or play, must reflect us, otherwise their value to us is either diminished or straight up non-existent, is incredibly narcissistic and retarded. It's retarded! Like, you either like what you're watching or you don't. No one, be them white, black, or any other shade in between, should be obsessing with this aspect of media and deriving value, or the lack thereof, because of it not featuring motherfuckers who look like them or allow them to see themselves, whatever the fuck that even means. This is such a sickly, narcissistic way of viewing and interacting with art and the world around us. Again, entertainment isn't here to represent us. If we don't like something, it's not that thing that has to change to appeal to us while neglecting its own fans. We simply have to move the fuck on and find other content that does appeal to us, and none of it should derive from immutable characteristics such as race, gender, and sexuality. End of story. This is how you pave the way for an incredibly racist and segregated fucking future. I genuinely don't understand how people can support this. I don't. But anyway, back to this nonsense about normal people. A lot of people tolerated a lot of normal stuff at first because they don't want to be jerks, and to some extent they may even have found value in it. But at some point the activism got dialed to 11, and then 12, and then 13, and 14, so on and so forth. And now not only was it mandatory to be everywhere, but there were straight up retards trying to come up with weird ass Marxism ass bullshit to justify why it should be mandatory for social impact. Why does a game studio have to produce social impact? A game studio should do one thing: make a good game for people to entertain themselves. That's it. And this wasn't enough either. In many cases, such as it was with the Rings of Power, the source, so Lord of the Rings, had to be attacked as well. It had to be made to look bad. It had to have morons say shit like lack of diversity being an issue that is now corrected. If not morons straight up calling it racist. And this was all over with other pieces of media too. Just now recently we have Snow White with the actress Rachel Zegler saying that the original is packed with misogyny and shit like that, and it's really weird because the prince kisses the girl while she's asleep. Weird. What the fuck are you on about? Shut the fuck up. The MCU had to go through an entire phase where it skewed so much towards female heroes, some of which weren't even original, they were just female counterparts of the male ones, originating in the MCU meme, and a total flop at the box office. Ghostbusters also needed to have a whole female reboot because, of course, naturally, Hogwarts, despite being a somewhat diverse setting already, needs main characters to be race-swapped as well, because of course, like our boy Snape. I wonder if Cowboy would mute me too if I made jokes about the new Snape, calling him the half-blood prince of Bel-Air, or maybe something related with getting a Glock out instead of a wand. Anyway, so on and so forth. Sadly, it didn't stop there either, because activists are activists for a reason, and then DEI straight up entered the picture, in very prominent ways with their own departments focused on meeting their quotas. Then we meet a new issue, which is, and I'm going to keep it as short as possible here, if you have a department created and employing people to target a certain problem by reaching a certain goal, then what do you do when you reach that goal and the problem is supposedly no longer there? What? Get your department shut down? Get fired? Get budget cuts out of the company? Get transferred over to some other position where you actually have to work? Fuck no, dude. You bullshit people and you keep pushing more goals to solve more problems that you create yourself. So basically, you're always ending up pushing more and more and more overt and extreme stuff in these products. And if you go up the ladder of representation, things get very complicated very fast as well. For example, characters of color, for lack of a better word, and gay representation. How do you do those? Well, it's simple. You just put them in the fucking show or the game or the movie. They are immediately visible. A character of color, you already know. It's right there. Jamal. Then a gay character, it's very easy as well. You put in a partner, give the character a partner, put them in a scene where they kiss or whatever, or they show up holding hands, or they talk talk to each other as a couple do, and there you go, gay representation. But as you go up that ladder, things are going to get crazy complicated. For example, trans people and non-binary people. How do you grab an actor and you place that actor in the scene full on as a non-binary or trans representation without writing cringe into the dialogue to show that? You can't. So at this point, you're now at a level where you're fucking with scenes and dialogue to virtue signal to your audience. And if you do it in the setting of fantasy or historical fiction or anything like that, it's even worse, because then it just stands all the fucking way out. It just doesn't fit in at all.
So, I'm non-binary.
Holy Jesus.
What does that mean? It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
Fucking pronouns!
If this is because I have criticized your dress or your manners...
It isn't!
Under the Cune, the term for one whose gender does not match the one given to them at birth was a cunithlock. Perhaps you are like that.
Why do you have to keep picking at it? Why can't you just be happy for me?
Evitash, chakra to ebra.
So I'm supposed to struggle with who I am? Even if I don't feel like I fit, even if I feel wrong?
No, you misunderstood.
Then say it better! Why am I never enough for you?
I will go. Thank you for inviting me to your home. Panahedan.
What are you, Down syndrome?
This stuff is tacky, it breaks immersion, and if you do it constantly across different shows, people's eyes can only roll so much to the back of their heads where they just hit their limit and they don't want to deal with it anymore. Their patience and their tolerance was taken advantage of. It is what it is. And you also have to take into account that this crosses over to other aspects of reality, like I said before: education, corporations, politics, etc. So at times it's like you can't even breathe. You can't even take a shit without this coming up in some way, shape or form. And you can even be someone relatively progressive, or whatever the fuck the right word over here would be, where you're like pro-gay marriage, where you don't have any issues with adults transitioning if they got dysphoria and all that jazz. But if you merely question the validity of these infinite genders, or you question these people that have these crazy pronouns, the she, sham, and zim, zers, and the they, thams, and all that shit, as they try to push that into law, then you are suddenly a terrible person. And let's not even mention if you dare talk about the unfairness of trans athletes in female sports, or the craziness of self-identity, where a person can just say, I'm a woman, I identify as a woman, and then we must silence ourselves and respect it as they go into female bathrooms right behind our girlfriends or wives or daughters or even mothers. And whether Fighting Cowboy likes it or not, these things are connected. It is a fact. These things are connected, and normal people pay attention to this shit. Because you can literally be at work and your boss announces a new diversity, equity, and inclusion program that is going to be part of the company, and it stipulates this, that, and the other, and you have to fucking comply with it. You go get your kid from school, you ask him how his day is going, and he says that he's a fucking fairy gender now or some shit because his teacher taught him a bunch of new genders and stuff, and he wants that. Your wife gets home from the mall, says she saw a dude walking out of the bathroom. Then you fucking sit on the couch, you grab the fucking the remote, you turn on Disney Plus, you got Rachel Zegler roasting you for 2 fucking hours long. So you say, fuck this, I'm gonna play a fucking video game. So you jump into Dragon Age Veilguard because, you know, it's a fantasy video game. It's dragons and ages. That's it. That's all you know about it. You don't want to fucking... You just want to get away from planet Earth as much and as far as you can. And let's say that you don't even see the top surgery scar nonsense on the character creator. You don't even go through the character creator. You fucking select the default character and you just press play. And then a few hours later you meet Tash. And she fucking tells you... Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. I'm back. And she fucking tells you that she's non-binary, and she makes a whole song and fucking dance about women, you know, like, who wants to be a woman? Nobody likes to be a woman. All this fucking bullshit, and then you're right back in planet Earth again. How are people not supposed to notice these things when they are coupled together so overtly? And they're not even helping the people that they're supposed to help, because this is a minority, and so it should be treated as a minority. By which I mean, it should be proportional to the amount of people that it represents. Doing it the way that it's being done now is going to cause radicalization. It's already causing radicalization, because it's insane, it's disproportionate, and it's very forceful. It's getting in the way of how people live their lives, and demonizing them for speaking about it, just speaking about it. Like, you cannot even speak about it. That's the biggest problem, because without talking about it, how are people ever going to reach a middle ground that serves everyone? Anyway, I'm moving on. I was just going to mention one more thing, because last year I actually did what, Cowboy said in the video, which was to approach someone that is actually normal and ask him about this shit. And I did that. I went to a wedding last year. It was a family event. My cousin was there with his girlfriend. I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, so we got catching up. We were talking about a mutual friend who had gone completely nutty, I think he started watching Hassan or something 24/7. My cousin knew him better than me, so I asked him if he was always like this or not. And then the conversation just kind of naturally went towards wokeness in video games, because we're also both lovers of video games. Both my cousin and his girlfriend knew about a lot of this stuff, they just didn't know everything, right? Obviously they didn't know every bit of drama, every detail of every controversy. We talked about the Black Myth Wukong controversy, talked about the Stellar Blade controversy, the list from Xbox Game Studios, this list right here on screen right now, with all of these ideologically and politically based creative restrictions. And yeah, even though they didn't know about all of these details, we were still all in perfect sync when it came to these issues. Something Cowboy does not understand is that the majority of normal people out there are people with common sense. And all of these things that represent wokeness in society, entertainment, etc. are not things based on common sense. In fact, they're the opposite. They literally clash with common sense. So the more extreme these things get, the less support it will get from the silent majority. And just for you to get an idea of how normal these two are, they don't give a fuck about any of this. They play video games. I mean, actually my cousin plays video games. She plays, but less so. But they don't fuck with social media. And an even bigger damning piece of evidence, they like the Fallout show.
Now, I'm doing this. I'm trying to present an olive branch, because there's a lot of people that are coming into the comments leaving dumb shit. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't think you're all mentally ill. I think a lot of y'all have been lied to. I think a lot of people that are getting riled up by these grifters, I think you're just looking for someone to reach out to, and you don't know that you're having smoke blown up your ass by people that profit off your outrage. And so I'm doing this video to try and fucking give y'all a hand. I'm trying to reach out and be like, listen, come back to fucking reality, bro. Come back to reality.
He's not presenting an olive branch at all here, in my opinion. He's actually being pretty goddamn condescending and insulting, pretending as if people are fucking retarded and can't think for themselves. As if we got to where we are because some random jackass on the internet told us to. As if we haven't seen the things that we've seen, heard the things that we've heard, and as if we haven't experienced this stuff firsthand, where we would see something and maybe go, hey man, is this necessary? Or for example, in the case of blackwashing characters such as the Viking in that Viking show, or Zeus and Achilles in the BBC show, or Anne Boleyn or Hannibal Barca, etc., see that and go, hey, this doesn't seem fair nor progressive. Either we are all going to stop doing this obviously bad thing that has been admitted to be bad when it was the whitewashing in Hollywood, or what the hell are we doing here? Double standards, hypocrisy, rules for me but not for thee, and got fucking railroaded for just daring to speak out and say something based solely in common sense. Like we're all just a bunch of dumb fucking brainless morons who got smoke blown up our asses and just believed whatever some moron said on YouTube. I know I gotta dial it back down and chill here for the sake of the response, but man, this is such an insulting line of thought and precisely why people like him lose. They don't acknowledge reality while telling us to come back to reality, bro. Cowboy is the one that needs to come back to reality. Open his eyes, take the blindfold off, unclog his ears, clear up that nose, and take a big whiff of the bullshit that we are all living through. And also drop the copium. I mean, come on, how can you actually believe that nonsense that you just said? Channels like these don't even goddamn work unless people are resonating with what people are saying. If you're just talking mad shit that makes no sense and is backed up by nothing, then there's no content there. People won't stick around for story time. Story time is on Tana Monjo's channel, big dog. You have an utterly unrealistic and borderline broken perspective on reality. Channels like these, like Hypnotic and other channels that you've been blocking, you know, like side scrollers for example, they cannot exist unless they are resonating with what people think and what people see, with what people live through. It's the irony of telling people to come back to reality when you can't even acknowledge the most basic, simple layer of it is insane. Again, as I said before, if you support this kind of thing, then say so. Argumentate why you believe it to be good or harmless or whatever, but make sure to do at least two things. Number one, acknowledge that your point of view is not the only real one that exists in this life. And number two, actually research your shit so that when people like us stand on business and tell you what's what, you don't just go, these grifters making shit up, I refuse to look up or acknowledge any of it because it really fuck up my whole worldview. These grifters, they can't even lift, man. If this is how you're going to approach these topics, you can keep your olive branch.
And the reality is, people are fed up with the bitching. And you're gonna say, oh boy, they made the games woke. No, they didn't. We had this shit all the way back in the day. You had gay relationships in Mass Effect. You could choose your gender in RPGs as long as games have been around, bro. This isn't new. It's not some secret fucking agenda that people are pushing out there.
He's right, actually. It's not a secret anymore. It's actually been blown out onto the open in 2024, yet somehow this guy is still fucking asleep on it. I mean, I say somehow, but I mean, I already know how. It's just what he said in the last thing. He hears these things, but he doesn't look into it. He just calls everything grifters and shit, and then moves back to streaming or doing let's plays of whatever the fuck game was sent to him by a publisher. And hey, I can't blame him. It's an easier and carefree life. I'd do that shit too if I could, but sadly I can't ignore it while it fucks with the industry. What I do wish that he did, since he's not interested in the least on actually engaging with these matters, is that he didn't talk out of his ass and tell people that they're being bullshitted by grifters. Can't think for themselves. We're all just retarded or mentally ill with no personal life experience at all of our own and no eyes to see all of this. People aren't fed up with the bitching, dude. People are far more fed up with the activists infesting these industries, actually. And the way that 2024 went in terms of sales and people speaking out, not just against it in the games industry, but also in the movie and TV show industries with Disney products, for example, shows that in spades. In spades, man. Like, honestly, I don't understand how he doesn't reach that. I genuinely love to hear his thoughts on this shit, because if his excuse is people influenced by grifters, then holy fuck, this mega grifter must be like Doctor Strange or some shit fucking with us all through the Mind Stone, because, man, we are really having an impact, aren't we? Cowboy, they made the games woke. No, they didn't. We had this shit all the way back in the day. Gay relationships in Mass Effect, choosing our gender in RPGs. Oh my god, how can you be this disingenuous, dude? Or dumb? Like how? When people speak out against ideological influence and activists in the fucking industry, they're not talking about this, obviously. This has existed, yes, it was all fine. Same-sex relationships in RPGs like Mass Effect are not a thing that people are uniting against. This isn't the issue, and also, this isn't what we have now. What we have now is not what we had back in the day. In fact, the existence of these things back in the day, and the fact that they were always fine, is proof that we're not a bunch of fucking retarded bigots existing on the internet. It's proof that it's not us who have changed, it's the industry. It's the people who are in control of it. It's the things that they are pushing. We could choose our gender in RPGs. Yes, we could. Male and female, not fucking body type A or body type B nonsense though, was it? Nor could we choose non-binaries now, could we? This shit of equating what we had and never complained about with this shit that is aggressively pushed on us now to the point where developers are overtly being insulting about it is so so disingenuous, and it's honestly disgusting, dude. This is contemporary, this is divisive, to the point where Matt Hansen wanted to do this just so that he could piss off an entire side of the fan base and only appeal to a very specific subsection of people who agreed with him politically. That was his intent. This is how activists work. This is what they're doing. It's not us who fucking put it there. It's not us bringing this into the discussion. All we want to do is play video games. But please, keep fucking ignoring these things. Keep saying that they don't exist. And I already know what his response to this would be as well. So what? So we can choose non-binary. So what? So what? They replaced male and female with body type A or B. So what? Why are you bitching? Why are you bitching about this, dude? So what? Failing to see what all of this shit is fucking connected to, which is what I just spoke about in the last topic, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. With all of this stuff connected, entertainment, corporations, education, politics, society in general, Jesus. This nonsense of trying to eradicate the terms male and female because it's wrong, it's outdated, it cannot be used because supposedly it's harmful or hurtful to those who don't conform to the gender binary, you know, the 1%. And here's another thing, what if we just don't want to? What if the fucking majority of the planet democratically votes that what they want is male and female, and that's how it's going to be? So what? What's the problem now? Why the fuck do we not have the right to do that without being hounded by people, calling us all kinds of fucking names and shit like that? Like, when is this going to stop is my question here. Why the fuck is the "so what, why do you care" always turned to us when everything was fine just the way that it was, and then some nutcase shows up and they go, "I think that we should change it to body type A and body type B. You know, I think we should do that because, you know, male and female, it has certain connotations that they're not very good. I don't think they're very good. I think they're bad. They have certain negative connotations. So I think that we should do some weird, inhumane shit where we just call them body type A and body type B." Why the fuck is it us who have to take this "so what, why do you care"? What are you talking about? Why is the 99% supposed to go, "Well, you're right, I guess I shouldn't care about this, even though that, you know, all of us fucking agree with this. I guess I should just shut the fuck up"? Is it because I don't sound virtuous when I argue for it? I can sound virtuous. I can cook up a bullshit argument that would make my position sound virtuous and kind and tolerant. You know, like the woked out people like to do, but I prefer not to. I'm not interested in trying to emotionally manipulate people. I'm interested in telling people how things are, dealing in common sense. And if I'm going to have a discussion with someone, I appreciate the same in return. I don't want fucking manipulative ass bullshit arguments. They don't work anymore. You know, people, they used to work because people had patience and tolerance for it. That patience and tolerance got abused, now they don't have it anymore. They wore it out. It is what it is. And the gall to say that there is no agenda. Like, no, there's nothing here to see, fellas. They're just making it up. We got developers being forced to put this body type stuff into games, you know, being enforced even in Japan now too. You can look up the Japanese developers that had to put that shit in there so that Dragon Quest HD remake could be sold out here in the West. But don't you worry, none of this exists. This list from Microsoft with all these creatively bankrupt restrictions, you know, wanting to dull down female character design, encouraging diversity quotas not just for characters but for their on-screen time as well, which is fucking crazy, and a bunch of other nonsense to do with characters having to proudly represent whatever the fuck the characters are from. You know, don't worry about it though, none of this exists either. There's no overt thought-controlling, behavior-enforcing shit going on in the industry. There's no agenda, guys. All of these activists caking AAA studios, making decisions that make no financial sense whatsoever, fated to run these companies into the ground as they push for more ideologically compromised shit that proves itself to be immersion breaking and devoid of any interest and creativity, and to be total fucking flops, already dating back from Disney, which has been doing it for even longer than the games industry. But don't worry, cowboy, ain't nothing to see here. The very game developer convention, GDC, caked with activist panels like these, literally specifying that what they do is political, because everything is political, and therefore video games must also be political, and shove their dog shit into it. But no, of course, there's nothing to see here either, guys. There's nothing to see here. Fucking narrative consulting companies being literally used so that studios can boost their ESG scores and get government grants or benefits on their investments from companies like BlackRock based on increasing their diversity, equity, and inclusion. No, there's nothing to see here, guys. There's no agenda, guys. It's the fucking grifters making it up. This is just a quick post-recording interjection because I just realized that this guy just says that there's no agenda whatsoever, while in the meantime, we have activists, like within Sweet Baby Inc., literally laying out their agenda. Literally just saying what their agenda is. But yeah, sure, you know, the content creators talking about it are just blowing smoke up people's asses, and the people looking at it with their own eyes are just fucking stupid, brainless, and mentally ill.
Like, this isn't new. It's not some secret fucking agenda that people are pushing out there.
If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups, and if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
Just fucking slipped his mind.
Guys, you're being brainwashed by me. I have the Mind Stone. I've had the Mind Stone the whole time. You motherfuckers didn't even know it. It's us, bro. It's the grifter. Fucking Endymion, that prick, Albanian or Croatian or whatever the fuck he is. He's making shit up. How dare he? Fucking Rev says Desu, that prick with an anime profile and shit like that. You, the grifter. You guys are being eaten alive by these grifters. He's not even a real man. He has a girl avatar. He's not even a real man like me. I can break logs apart with my fucking biceps. That Hypnotic fucking prick with a mask making all this garbage up. He's cooking you alive, boys. Making up fan fictions and shit, sending them to Smash AT on a fake email, then getting him to report it as news. Don't you see that these grifters are making money out of you guys? Come on, guys, wake up. And don't get me started with Nerdrotic and that Critical Drinker. Couple of fucking fake-ass grifters. Fucking take off your glasses, you bastards. Making all this shit up about Hollywood, where this infestation has been running rampant for even longer than the games industry. What a couple of fucking look at them. Look how old they are. They can't even lift. They can't even lift, guys. I'm totally extending an olive branch, by the way. Guys, come and watch my channel instead. These pricks, they're lying to you. You're retarded. You're believing it. Come to my channel instead, where the truth reigns true. Fucking ass, heel versus babyface. What a shit-eating caveman. Someone ought to shoot him with a dildo launcher right into his ass.
Moving on.
Pfft, Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers. He's fucking gay. You're believing the lies of a gay of a grafter? A grafter? And the worst of all, Asmongold, the Lich King of fucking roaches, goddamn prick calling me out last year about the microtransactions in Dragon's Dogma 2, fucking radicalizing all of these stupid brain-dead retards who can think for themselves. By the way, guys, I'm totally doing an olive branch here. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Look at his arms. So tiny. So tiny. His arms so tiny. Look at my arms, though. Now These are the arms of a hero, and I am here to save you from the grifters' lies.
What's really happening is, as a society, we're making progress. And we're seeing more inclusivity. We're seeing more diversity. I'm a big straight white dude. Looking at this chat, I would guess probably a fraction of the people in this chat are big straight white dudes, all right? I had to say this before, but the world isn't big straight white dudes. There's more than that. And we're seeing representation for those people so that they can see some shit in media and be like, yo, that's cool. I relate to this character.
We had our fun, but it's time to start closing this one off. And in this case here, you know, no shit, Sherlock. A whole variety of people exist on the planet. Ironically, a whole variety of people that have been happily consuming media without complaining for years, simply because they liked the media instead of getting sick with this obsession over race and gender. Funniest thing about progressives like this is that they have this teacher complex. Like, look at me, I'm educating the big straight white dudes that there's more than just big straight white dudes out there. everywhere, and they must be pandered to by these companies. We must do this for them. It's just not about us, white guys. We must do this because we say so. We must affect everyone's media because we feel bad about ourselves. Well, I'm sorry to say, but I'm not a fucking big straight white dude, and I have always been able to relate to the pieces of media that I enjoyed, even those that did feature big straight white dudes, because I could give a fuck about that surface level shit. You don't relate to people or things based on race. It's such a frustrating thing. I can't anymore with this. It's just brain dead bullshit, honestly. Please explain to me, how would this be a good thing? How would it be a good thing that we should only be able to fucking relate to what we play or watch if it's the same race, gender, or sexuality as us? Here's a newsflash for Cowboy coming straight from actual reality. Normal, healthy people relate to people and things on a much deeper level than skin. Freakazoid fruitcakes stop at skin color, yes, but normal people, they don't. They look deeper. They look for things that they like about a person, they look for things that they have in common, they look for life experiences that they shared, etc., whatever it is. Freakazoids, no, it's just the skin or, the genitalia. They look at Dragon Ball, is that, what is this? What the fuck is this? A fucking Dragon Ball? What is this? Is that a white guy? Man, fuck this show. White supremacist garbage. Garbage. This is not normal, dude. I already spoke of representation and how useless it is as a concept. Not just for what's healthy for the market, but healthy for people and society as well. So I'll just end it with also saying that this that he had to say just ends up passing along a very wrong message too, that implies that we've all been, all this time, we haven't had any diversity in media, which is yet another lefty talking point reeking of bullshit. There's been plenty of diversity in media, and it was done way better before activists were at the helm, obsessing over it and wanting to divide people through it, enhancing and focusing on their differences in an adverse way, through Oppression Olympics. And with this ideology, I pray that white people never disappear from the planet, otherwise we are fucked. Who knows what they're going to do when white people disappear, or who are they going to turn to? I'm gay, I deserve representation. Well, I'm gayer than you, therefore I am way more disenfranchised, and therefore I deserve to be represented way more than you. Nuh-uh, I'm blacker than you, therefore you don't show up the way that I show up. I am way bigger victim here, therefore I am the one who deserves these privileges. I mean, not privileges, these reparative benefits. Nuh-uh, I am homeless. I am gay, I have AIDS, I'm new in town, and therefore I deserve to see myself as the next Batman. It's the only thing that society can truly do to make this existence all better. When you really break this down to what it truly is, it's such a clown show. And you know what else is a solid ass fact? These companies that people like to shill for could actually be doing significant diversity that would actually be cool, right, and actually representative and valuable by, for example, instead of making the ranks of power, they could be working on original content based on folktales, culture, customs, religion, etc. from Africa or other areas of the world. Just think about the potential in Aztec stuff, for example. I always think about that because it's something that I don't know much about. Or other South American marvels. Or something in the jungles of India or something, or in the deserts of Africa. There's so much. And the same goes for games, by the way. Ubisoft didn't need to be like, okay, let's take feudal Japan and slap a black guy in there, and then we'll tell the totally real and not at all made up story by Thomas Lockley, about Yasuke, the legendary black samurai. They could quite literally have made another Assassin's Creed game in Africa or other areas of the world where there's more diversity. They could even go back to Egypt again. Egypt is a great setting. One game was already there, I wouldn't mind having another if it was well made. There's so much potential, but these companies, they don't care. It's not this that they're interested in, it's in causing division. But anyway guys, that's it for me on this one. The script is massive, this recording is probably going to be stupid long already, so I'm cutting it here. Next part of Cowboy's video goes off into some tangent about America and how it was built by diversity or whatever the fuck. I couldn't care less about this, and there's a lot more video to go. I might go over the rest of it and respond to it in a part 2, but yeah, if it is like the first 8 minutes of this video, his original video, then holy crap dude, like Like, honestly, I did genuinely want to extend an olive branch, but I can't tell if this is disingenuousness or such staggeringly uninformed and close-minded person that it'll just be a bunch more of total bullshit takes that disregard people, dismiss facts, and that distills the word into 3 parts. Smart dudes like him, the heroes of diversity and tolerance, asshole grifters like Hypnotic and Asmongold and company, malicious, nutritious evilmen, and then retards like you guys listening right now, because you can't think for yourselves. You know, you got caught in the grifter's net. You got caught in my trap. And this is a complicated thing because, as you can see, I keep pausing and I keep going on these tangents, and this ran very long because all this feels like it needs to be detailed because it's lacking so much context, lacking so much information. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do a part 2 going through the second half of the video. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, maybe I will, but it'll take me a while longer or something. I don't know yet, we will see. But one way or another, always remember, guys, you're stupid. I told you guys, hey, Veilguard is bad, and you guys went, Veilguard bad, boycott. So yeah, thanks for watching, slap the like button for the road, I'd really appreciate it after this, and don't forget, Veilguard bad. I'll see you guys on the next one, take care.